And we're back talking about marriage yet again. We've got some more on synergy. We'll talk a little bit about troubleshooting your marriage and things you can do to increase the odds of getting married in case it's not going so well for you just yet. I'm Jonathan Yelland, and this is Finding the Point. Hey folks, welcome back to Finding the Point. I'm Jonathan Yelland, board certified behavior analyst. With me today is our very favorite Pastor Aaron Mudge. Pastor Aaron, how are you doing today?
I'm actually doing a lot better than last time. I was pretty sick before, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, not a lot of people record through their COVID quarantine, so that's definitely guys. I don't know who's on the who would have to vote for it over there, but give this guy a raise. Hey, so today, Pastor Aaron, we're going to talk a little bit more about marriage. This is like the marriage episode part 2. So last time, we talked a lot about the concepts of marriage, what marriage is definitionally, what a covenant means, what we're agreeing to when we get married, concepts of what love is, ideas of we ended going into these ideas of behavioral economics and how value can be found from engaging in marital fidelity. And so let's pick that conversation back up, kind of where we left off there, with more of these ideas about why marriage works. Now, I've heard maybe you and your wife have had a few conversations about this behavioral economics idea since the last episode.
Yeah, this behavioral math. It's actually quite an interesting concept to me, and it really makes a lot of sense. And I definitely think it's something I'm curious to hear more about as we get into this.
Well, with the idea that we have there of why marriage works, why it's beneficial. The Bible tells us clearly that it is, and it points out how to do it. But I want to continue to make the case for why it's not just some kind of rote burden that we would need to engage in, but it's a duty that's beneficial and prosperous for us to follow after. So with that, I want to talk about synergy in the masculine and feminine virtues. So and last time we talked about behavioral economics and how the values of self-sacrifice and getting the benefit from the marital relationship benefits us. Go check that old episode if you missed it. And today I want to go back into the concept of why marriage works and talk about synergy. So just for any of my more academic-minded followers, I want to start this off with a slight disclaimer about social constructs. I understand, and I want you all to know that I know things like gender ideology and what's masculine and what's feminine is socially constructed. I get that. It's there because our culture views people in a certain way. So I'm acknowledging that and I'm accepting that. But I want to add that from the Christian perspective, those gender constructs are created by God. Yeah. These are ideas that God gives us on the roles that we can have. And so, yes, saying that men are a certain way and women are a certain way is something that is societally constructed, and we feel and think about it in the way that we feel and think about it in part because of society. But those ideas are also in part from a biblical thinking about men and women. And so, yes, it's socially constructed, but also that's okay. And that's the approach we're going to take with that in this today. So if you're out there and you're like, Jonathan, you're an academic, you should know better, social construct. I know the theories. I sat through the classes. I'm with you guys. I understand. And if you're out there and maybe you're like, well, not all women are this way and not all men are this way. I know. It's okay.
Well, and from the Christian perspective, as you said, we understand and believe that God designed each of us, and so God has a specific design, and so they are constructs, but God was the one that did those things, and God is the one that put marriage together. He instituted marriage, and so God knows how those things work and the differences with men and women, and so they are designed to fit together. Part of the reason there are some things that out there that maybe don't fit God's design is because of the fall of sin.
Well, and also when we're talking about the gender construct ideas, if you're really secular, your idea is that men and women are totally interchangeable, and there's no parity between the two. They just are whatever they are. That doesn't really fit, I think, with a biblical viewpoint.
No.
And a biblical viewpoint would say that certain people are, well, you know what? Let's take it to Corinthians chapter 12, which talks about the church needing all parts of the body.
Yeah.
There are some people who have certain attributes and others who have complementary attributes, and they can come together and do well together. And that's essentially where we're going to go with this in a second when we break down the concept of synergy. So we're talking about synergy today. We're looking at how men being manly and women being feminine works together to benefit both. That's the idea with synergy across the masculine and feminine virtues.
Okay.
And in that, there's going to be some women who have tendencies more towards certain roles or personalities, okay, and other people who would have different roles and personalities. But you can broadly generalize men and women to have a stronger preference is the wrong word, but a stronger bias towards certain roles. All right. And then you're going to have people who disrupt the norm. Like, for instance, I am far more talkative than my wife. Okay. Like
same here.
When we had our marriage counseling, the pastor we were marriage counseling with said something to the effect of, he's going to come home from work and just not going to want to say anything. And you're just going to want to talk his ear off and tell him about everything that happened that day. With me and my wife, it's the exact opposite.
She's here.
Like, you got home from work. I've been working hard all day. I just don't want to say anything else. Yep. And then I'm like, let me tell you all the crazy things that happened at work today. You'll never believe it.
Yep. She'd rather just listen and let me yammer on.
Yeah.
And then when I'm in a quiet mood, then she's like, what's wrong? Are you okay?
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the stereotypes are true, but also on an individual level, they're not. Right. So right. There's disruptions to the stereotype.
Sure.
But we can use the concepts there to guide us in creating a generalized understanding of how the system works. And then we recognize that on an individual level, you can't just like pick a random girl out of the crowd and be like, yep, we're perfectly compatible. This is a great synergy. It's all going to work out. That's why we need a date. That's why we need to spend time making sure we're aligned on the values, that we're personalities are going to be complementary, that we're going to be able to work together towards the goals of marriage and all that. Does that make sense?
And yeah, it does. And when we talk about that as well, like, you want to make sure values, you have the same values. I think that's really important.
Right.
So that you're not, as the Bible says, unequally yoked. As well, though, you're not necessarily just wanting someone that is exactly like you.
That would be bad.
That would be bad because then we are both good at the same thing and we're both bad at the same thing. And it's better, and this is why we're going to get into it, the masculine-feminine relationship works because one has a tendency to be better at one thing and the other has a tendency to be maybe better at the thing that you're bad at. So it complements and you come together as a team to make one unit, as the Bible talks about. The husband and wife come together as one flesh, and so you're meant to come together to be one unit.
Absolutely. And you know what, Pastor Aaron, that's a great summary. So let's just jump right in and dig down in on this. So the idea we're talking about is marital synergy. The concept of synergy would be that two can do together more than each could do individually if added together. I think the classic example is horses. If you have two strong horses, one can pull only so much weight and the other can only pull so much weight, and you can add their weight together, and let's say it's 10 weights. I don't know the units. How much, I don't know how much a horse can pull. But let's say it can pull 10 of whatever units you're in. But then if those two horses are both together and they're yoked together and they're pulling that cart together, they can pull much more than 10, like 20 or 30 weights, because they are able to both complement each other and synergistically get more out of their effort than they could were they to act individually. So the idea is this. Men can do masculine things, or I'd like to call it, Pastor, and can perform the masculine virtues better than they can perform the feminine virtues. Okay, and in some cases you may have a male person who is able to very adequately express feminine virtues, caring and compassion. Even men who are capable in exhibiting the feminine virtues well are likely to be able to exhibit the masculine virtues better than they would be able to exhibit the feminine virtues were they to attempt to do that. So the theory is men can do manly things better than they can do feminine things. And conversely, women can profess the feminine virtues better than they can profess the masculine virtues. With this, recognizing that both men and women can do both, and both men and women need to exhibit both masculine and feminine virtues. If you only exhibit, like for instance, if you have strength and protection and power and leadership, but you have no compassion or warmth or caring, then you have an imbalance in your virtues. And that's a serious problem. So if was how you exhibited yourself as a man, that's a problem, and you would need to work to correct that. But the theory is men do manly things better than they can do feminine things. Women can do feminine things better than they can do manly things, and that's okay, and that's good. So we're starting with that.
I think maybe it's also a good thing to mention as well, that because I think right now sometimes in our culture, sometimes masculine virtues are vilified as, oh no, that's just hostile masculinity, and vice versa. Well, that feminine virtue, well, that's not going to get you where you need. That's not as important, and I think it's important that we recognize that both are made by God and both are important and both are valuable.
And I think too, what we do see in the world generally is a push that says, women, your feminine virtues are wrong. You should not pursue them, and instead you should pursue the masculine virtues. And men, the masculine virtues are wrong. You should not pursue them, and instead you should pursue the feminine virtues.
Yeah.
And in doing that worldly idea takes away from both men and women the ability to be excellent in the areas to which they're most likely acclimated to be excellent in.
Yeah. And it's okay to have differences, and having those differences doesn't mean that one is more valuable than the other. And I've talked about this before in my church, but one of the things that a lot of people get a little upset about is a verse that I wanted to bring up, and then I'll give this illustration.
Sure.
1 Peter 3:7 says, "Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them," as in your wives, "dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered." And there's a lot of people out there that don't like that weaker vessel. And a lot of people seem to take that, and then we'll look at some other verses here in a little bit, but there's a lot of other passages that talk about the wife submitting to the husband, and the husband's role is to be the leader. And so a lot of people look at that and say, well, the Bible is saying that the wife or the woman is less important than the man. And I disagree with that. That's not what it's saying. Now, it says the weaker Well, it's literally meaning physically weaker. And for the most part, I know there's exceptions, but for the most part, men tend to be stronger and women tend to be weaker. But that doesn't mean that the women are less valuable. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, yeah, and from the science side of things, the strongest man is always going to be stronger than the strongest woman, and the weakest man is always going to be stronger than the weakest woman. So at the very end of the scales, it is so. And in the practical general averages, the average man is stronger than the average woman. Now that doesn't mean that there's not going to be women out there. Like the strongest woman is definitely stronger than like your than some men. All right, it's not like there's all the women and then it starts at the weakest man after that.
Right.
You know, so that like, and that's a really old idea that's how it works. It's just not scientifically what's real. There's variation between the two, but generally speaking, you can take pretty much any average man that you've got just lying around in the congregation and arm wrestle against an average woman in the congregation. Yeah. They're going to win every time.
And the thing that the point I think it's important to make is that both are important and both are valuable. And so to me, the way I like to illustrate this is I've brought before when I'm speaking about this topic, 2 cups. So one cup that I have is a big one of those heavy metal tumblers. They're double walled and they're very well insulated and they keep things cold for a long time or hot. And they're also very sturdy. I've dropped them before and they were no worse for wear.
Sure.
And the other cup is a delicate fine china teacup kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Both are incredibly valuable, and they both have different functions that they can do better than the other. But just because the teacup is weaker, I mean, in a sense, you would say it is weaker because it's more fragile, it's easier to break, and so on. But because even though it is weaker, it does not mean it's less valuable than the metal tumbler.
Well, and to add to that, there's different purposes. You don't want to put out your steel rubberized reinforced tumbler that you can throw out of the window of your car and it's fine. You don't put that out when you invite the pastor over for lunch on Sunday afternoon. You put out the fine china teacup. And you don't take the fine china teacup in the truck to sip your coffee or whatever you're going to drink out of your teacup on the way into work. Because each of them are best at the thing that they're best at. And
exactly.
So they are best served, the highest value is elicited from them when their use is aligned with their purpose. So
and yeah, technically, yes, you could use your tumbler for high tea with the pastor.
Not if you like your pastor, guys. Get the good cups out. Come on.
The nice cups are going to do better. Yeah, and so just like you said there.
Right. And so that leads us to that concept of the concept of men being capable in masculine virtues and women being capable in the feminine virtues leads us to the way that marriage brings them together in synergy. The metaphor I like to use for this is there's 2 different powers in marriage. There's the power of the fire and the power of the spear.
Okay.
The idea is that your marriage is imagine the survival setting, right?
Okay.
Right? Your survival setting. You need you've got your camp that's set up. And you need, at the center of the camp, the fire. The fire feeds you. It keeps you warm. It lets you cook your food. It's necessary for survival. It is the core of your group, and it is the power that keeps you alive.
Okay.
Also, on the edge of your camp, you have the border. And with that border, you have the power of the spear. The person out there who is fighting the monsters, getting the food, scouting the area to know the way to go forward on your travel. You have to have that strength and ability to find the path and take the leadership out there on the border of the camp. But that power on the border is useless without the fire and the power of the fire at the center of the camp. So the idea of marital synergy is that women are able to express these feminine virtues and provide for all of the things with the power of the fire. They can be the keepers at home, as the Bible says. They can care for the family, show love and compassion and nurturing, and provide in the home for the home, and show that level of care and concern that's needed for that role. And then while they are fulfilling the needs in that role, they don't have to worry about the border, because they're trusting their husband to take up the power of the spear and to be at the border and to fight the threats against the home and to bring home the I don't know, woolly mammoth. Is this a caveman situation, I guess? So, bring home the woolly mammoth, or fight the bear and bring the meat home, find the path through the forest, find the way we can go, and take that leadership forward. When the women in this camp situation are keeping that fire, and they're keeping the fire for the men who are on the border, protecting the home and protecting the family, both are going to have better benefits than if both were trying to do both of those things. If you're trying to keep your fire and keep your spear, there's going to be times when the fire is not tended to. And there's times when the border is not watched and things can come in. So it's better, instead of everyone trying to do everything, for us to trust, and for the women to take up the role which is best suited for their virtues, and for the men to take up the role that's best suited for their virtues, in recognizing that both are essential and needed for success. And through it, both men and women can benefit from the synergy that comes there, with each of them taking up that power that's best suited to their hands and doing to the best of their ability for the others that are in their family.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the two things that I kind of struck me when you were talking about that was, one, so what you're saying is husband and wife, they're a team.
Absolutely. They need to be.
And just like any team, I mean, you think of a team as like a firefighting team or a sports team. I know for me, I played soccer in high school, and you can't have everyone in the team playing the same position. It doesn't work.
Right.
You're not going to accomplish your goal very well if everybody is a goalie.
Right. You'll never score. You'll never score a point.
I was better suited in a defensive position because of my size and my build and everything. And I enjoyed that more. And other guys were more suited in the offensive positions, scoring goals. And I could do that, and they could do defense. But we both were better at those things, and so that's why we were in those positions.
Yeah, and you see it with like go to a third grade soccer thing. Like they're just all chasing after the ball the whole time,
like a swarm of bees.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hilarious to watch for like about 10 minutes, and then you're kind of like, okay, when is this game over? But like when everyone's charging for that thing that they want, that soccer ball, you don't. I mean, a goal is probably going to be scored eventually, because third graders do score goals in soccer. But how much better would they be if each of them acted in accordance with their virtues? And your person who's practiced being in the goal stays in the goal, and the defensemen are on defense because that's what they practice, that's what they prepared for. And your centers are up, pushing. And shouldn't go too far in the sports metaphor because I'm not great at this, but But yeah, when you're playing your position, like the quarterback has to be the quarterback,
Right.
right? The quarterback can't be the lineman. He needs a lineman. Without a lineman, then the quarterback's toast.
That's right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
So in the same way, men need to have in their relationship, they need to be able to trust their wives to keep the fire, take care of the kids, take care of the home, take care of the needs that they have, that are best handled with the feminine virtues of compassion and care and the other feminine virtues that we should probably put a list on the screen, and then the women in a marital relationship need to be able to trust that their men are at the border with the spear and protecting them and looking out for the dangers and providing leadership and providing security. And it's really sad because and you'd probably know more about this than I do, but I hear from my pastor over here in Michigan that there's a problem right now where men aren't doing that. They're not doing what they need to do. We're supposed to be leaders, but we're not providing the leadership. We're supposed to be considering the situation we're in and determining the best way to go, and then forging ahead in that direction as leaders. And instead, the sad tale is a lot of times we're just taking advantage of the power of the fire and not leading. And then the women feel that they are compelled to take up the leadership, and that's a bad thing. It's not good.
No, it's not good. And it causes problems. So, before we move on to the next topic, I had said there were two things that stood out to me.
Yeah.
The first was that their husband and wife are a team. The second one is that they have a goal, a purpose that they are trying to achieve. And I think a lot of times we think of marriage as just a man, a woman, they're in love, and so marriage is just them spending their life together. But as Christians, we understand that the humans have a purpose, and our purpose is to glorify God, and we do so by choosing Him and His way. Mm-hmm. And so it would stand then that a godly marriage would have a purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to the leadership concept, part of that is the male's role to find a way that your marriage relationship team, your team, we'll call it your marriage team, find something that your team can do that's worth doing. Yeah. And then take the leadership to pursue that. And I think maybe the reason that we have this dearth of leadership going on in our churches and with Christians today is that our men have not considered the thing that they could be doing with their team. What can our team do? And they're just surviving. Yeah. They're just our camp's out here in the woods somewhere, and we're just gonna do the best we can to stay alive.
Rather than moving the camp to a particular
maybe you
goal.
need to find a path through the woods. And that's the role that men are assigned to and are best suited for. And honestly, if you're in a marriage out there and you're a man and you're listening to this, it's your job. Pick it up. Find what you can do. Find something worth doing and orient your family towards achieving it.
Yep. And as a pastor, I would very much say that if you're a Christian family, that should be something that is going to be glorifying to God and something that's going to be for God. And I definitely think a huge help and a benefit to a family would be to find a ministry that you can do together as a family.
And I imagine
a practical goal. And I know we haven't gotten to Pastor Aaron's challenge yet, but that's something. As a pastor, boy, when I get a whole family that likes to do a ministry together, whether in the church or something that's, them as a family, but of course through the church, that's an incredible thing for me as a pastor, but it's also an incredible thing for that family.
Right. And I would say anybody out there who might be struggling to think, well, I don't know what our family, talk to your pastor. I have a feeling your pastor has something in mind, probably right now, that might be something you could work towards. I know that a burden for me and my wife, Pastor Aaron, I have a burden for our youth, young high school students and young adults. I see tragically how many of them are being stolen away by the ideas of the world and the liberal Christian theological mindset. And I'm incredibly burdened to fight back against that. I mean, part of me wanting to do this show for you and your church is behind that. And so in that, I'm pursuing continuing higher education and working through these ideas so that we can present them and share them. So my wife is on board with this, and our family is oriented towards being able to get ourselves the knowledge needed and the positioning ourselves so we can teach those ideas and help fight back against this destructive attacks from the world. And so it's a little abstract, I guess, but my wife and I have seen that, and that's the way our family is decided to go forward, and that's what we're pursuing. So I'm working crazy hours and doing this show, and I'm doing school, working on this PhD program, not to get the titles and glorify myself and look at how awesome I am, but because we've seen that there's a need for this kind of fight, and I don't see very many people who are well suited to engage in that fight, and I see that we need that. So I've seen that need, and our relationship have talked with my wife and made the decision that that's where we're going to go. And so that's what we're pursuing. And so together, my wife is on board with this and accepting my leadership, and we're working together in synergy. So she's taking care of our kids. She's taking care of our house. I'm spending time at work. I'm spending time at school. I'm spending time with my family to make sure that I'm leading them and caring for them and showing love to them. And we're together working towards these eternal goals that have meaning and value for us. And I guess it's a little abstract, so I hope that makes sense. But
and I bet you anything, if you're like my wife and I, these things that you've been learning and that you want to teach to others, you're also bouncing those off of your wife and hashing those things out, and she's a huge help to you in that.
Yeah, because it comes back to this idea of synergy. My perspective looks at things through the virtues and considerations that are relevant to someone with my position, but my wife is the counter to that. She's the foil to my I've got the whole ambition and drive and the masculine vices as well, pride and arrogance and all of those things as well. So so a lot of times the feminine virtues are the solution to the masculine vices as well. So together we complement each other, and she's able to put all of her forces and efforts into that one side, and then I can bring these ideas that we're working on to her, and together we have a better solution, and a better solution than I could ever hope to come up with on my own. And even if she were to work on it on her own and I was to work it on my own, and you put that together, this would be so much more than either of us could do individually, even if you put it together, because it's marital synergy. When I do what I am best gifted to do, and she does what she's best gifted to do, and it's complementary, then we are able to accomplish so much more for the sake of the gospel and God's word in the world. And that's the power of synergy.
So as a pastor, I'm here going, we're talking a lot about this. Does the Bible say this?
Well, go ahead, Pastor.
Can I bring up the verses?
Let's do it. Verse time.
All right. So, just some verses, and I know people. There's a lot of women out there that get their hackles raised by that submit word, but it is a biblical word, and it falls into what we're talking about with this synergy and these roles. Colossians 3:18 through 19. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, as it is fit in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives, and be not bitter against them. And then Ephesians 5:22 through 33, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I don't think we need to go into the whole thing today, but it goes into the same thing. Wives, submit to your husbands. The husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church and the Savior of the body. And it lays out the fact that the husband is the head of the church, or of the family, as Christ is the head of the church. And so the wife submits to the husband, but that means that the husband then is directly responsible for his actions and choices to God.
Yeah.
And so yes, the husband is making decisions and choices, and the wife, of course, as a teammate, has input in those things. Sorry, I hit my microphone there. But the husband is doing what he feels is the direction from God, and so the husband then carries some responsibility for the direction that he is moving that family, like we talked about moving the camp through the forest. And so if the wife says, husband, that's not the direction that God says, well, the wife knows that the husband is going to answer to God, and so the wife says, God, show him. And I remember in premarital counseling being told the biblical definition of submission is the wife ducks so God can hit the husband.
That's funny. Yeah. Realistically, whenever you have a group of people together, no one is going to agree 100%. And the problem with that is that at the end of the day, time moves forward and a choice has to be made. You see it in government. A choice has to be made. Sometimes the choice is to just argue and not take action. Okay, that can happen. But at the end of the day, a choice must be made because the decision is present. And failing to choose is sometimes the choice, which essentially means fail to act. But the Bible model is that after the discussion's all said and done and everything has been met, the meetings are all over and we have to choose at the end of the day. It is the man's responsibility to choose. And in an ideal situation, the synergy is there and the men and women are complementing each other, and there's not going to be a lot of conflict. I would say, Aaron, I've been married at least 10 and a half years now. In my marriage, there has been maybe 2 times ever that my wife and I did not agree on the way we were going to go, and she just kind of said, okay, I don't think that's what I want, but we're going to do it anyways. And it's never been on anything major. Every major serious life decision, we've always been in agreement because our values are aligned and we're both working towards the same goal.
Right.
Now, it's been my responsibility to figure out a lot of times and take the leadership on, okay, how are we going to meet that goal and what's out there? But when I say, okay, hey, over the hill there's a lake, and on one side of the lake is thick forest and on the other side is open field, I think we should go through the open field. And she says, but we're running low on firewood, maybe we should go through the forest because it'll be easier to get firewood. And I'll say, okay, you know what? That makes sense. I'm going to change my mind. We're going to do this together. I'm going to decide that we go through the woods. Or maybe it's like, look, I know that we're low on firewood and that's a problem. But I also know that there's a lot of bears, and I'm a little weak right now from fighting off the last 20 bears, and we need to go a little more safer route right now. And she's like, but we really need firewood. He's like, I know, but this is the right way to go. She's like, okay, I will submit. We're gonna go. I'm trusting you to solve the firewood problem, but okay, we'll go. And so maybe there's disagreement, but at the end of the day, the submission is saying, okay, I understand that my problems are still valid and your understanding my problems are still valid, but because a decision has to be made, we can't just sit here on the edge of the lake. One person at the end of it has to make the call. Because both needs are valid. Firewood and not getting killed by bears are both valid needs for your family. And they're both legitimate and maybe equal, because if you run out of that firewood, then you're dead. If you get killed by a bear, you're also dead. So you come together, you talk about it, but at the end of the day, the Bible has given the responsibility for the ultimate decision to the man. And then if you guys do so well going over to the meadows and things don't go great, and well, then that's his responsibility, and now he's got to solve that problem.
Yep. And I think an important aspect of that too, if you think in that scenario, so the wife says, okay, fine, we'll go the way you want, and then you run out of firewood. Well, if you're going to be a part of the team, it's not helpful to the team to begin saying, see, I told you we needed the firewood.
Yep. And then that's the feminine vices coming out as well.
Right. And even the other way around, for if the husband says, all right, I see value to what you say, so let's go that way, and then blames her when things don't go right. No, that's not.
See, and then that's where your synergy is gone, because what happens is the masculine virtues need to complement the feminine virtues, but the feminine virtues need to be present to compensate for the masculine vices.
Yep.
And the same with the masculine virtues complementing the feminine vices, so that it works together. But if both sides fail to follow spiritual actions and a spiritual way, then you fall into the vices instead of the virtues. And then your women become nagging and complaining, and your men become lazy and complacent and
domineering.
Exactly.
Yep.
And the real solution is, okay, we went along the meadow side and we're short on firewood. What can I do? How can I solve this? And then that's when he's out there like burning cows or something. I don't know how this solved. I'm clearly not teaching a survival class, Pastor Aaron.
Well, if you're like me, living out in the prairie, and you know everything about Little House on the Prairie, you'd make straw twists, and then you can burn those.
Yeah, all right, that makes sense. I was thinking maybe cow chips, but I guess that's a thing people burned. Once again, not a survival class. This
no.
podcast does not provide medical knowledge or podcast knowledge officially.
So
won't add that to the disclaimer, though.
One thing I wanted to mention too about this idea of submission, because like I said, it's in our culture sometimes it's viewed as a dirty word.
Well, it's because of values.
Yeah.
The idea is like, well, if I have to submit, that means that my ideas are not as valued. I'm not as important. Yeah. And it's a wrong way to think about it. It's the worldly way to think about it.
It is.
It's why the world wants women to think that they have to compete in a workplace to be valued. If you're not the CEO, well, being a CEO is the highest form of virtue for a woman, right? But no, it's not. Why would that be? You could be, like, there's very many very intelligent and capable women, okay? Take my boss, for instance. My boss is very smart, and she's very good at her job. She's better at her job than I am at the same job. Like, she's very good. She could potentially work all the way up to be the CEO of our company and run the place. And maybe she will. She's probably capable of it. But why would that becoming a CEO be better than if someone was to instead invest in their family and invest in their children and reach some meaningful goal through that process? I mean,
yeah.
We make more widgets? Is that the thing that makes you valuable? It's choosing God's way. That's what makes you valuable. So, if my boss, I don't know what her religious affiliation is, but if my boss was a Christian and her life circumstances indicated that pursuing being the CEO would be the way to benefit God and God's way, I mean, maybe that's what it is. I don't know her situation.
Right.
But for many of us, I don't think that's our situation. And for many women, the world is saying, no, you have to be ambitious and you have to be this and you have to be that. You can't be this other thing. And if you were to try to be that Proverbs 31 woman who is taking care of things at the home and being industrious and being supportive and making the family work and the housework and making her husband respected and making her family have a good reputation and all those things that are there, that's a bad thing to be because you're not the CEO.
Right.
You're not the man out there in the gates of the city who's telling everybody what to do. Well, the man can only be in the gates of the city if his wife is there at home. That's the only way he can even get there. You can't get there without that.
Yeah. And one of the things that I like to think about this idea of submission is if you bring it to the Godhead, if you bring it to God the Father, God the Son, God the Father, God the Son, are they equal? Yeah, they are. They're both God. But when Jesus was here on earth, many, many times he said, I do my Father's will. Mm-hmm. I submit to the Father. Well, if that meant that Jesus was less important or less valuable or less equal than God, then that would be heresy.
Right, right. It's technically impossible for Jesus to be less valuable than God. He's infinite. If God is an infinite, all-powerful, all the omnis,
and whatever. So if Jesus submitted to God, well, then we see the value then in wives submitting to the husband. So anyway, that's the pastor and me.
So there's no reduction in value for women to have to assume the role where they defer to the leadership of their husbands when there is conflict in determining which way to go.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to put out.
And again, I'll just say this. This is assuming that both the husband and the wife are fulfilling their roles as they ought to and choosing God and God's way. But sometimes, one, say the husband can be the domineering, maybe even borderline abusive, controlling, and that's not the right way either. So, right.
because we like to talk about the masculine and feminine virtues, but the masculine and feminine vices are present as well. And pushing those things away is important to having things go well. And speaking of things going well, Pastor Aaron, unless you want to add further there, I think this is a good transition into the next idea. So we're talking about marital ideals, and maybe you're watching this and thinking, well, yeah, it would be awesome if we had that kind of marital synergy, but my lazy old husband isn't going to do anything, or my hen-pecking, nagging wife won't listen to me for anything if she just... So maybe you're having that rough spot in your marriage. Okay, so let's talk about that. If you've got... because you can go see someone for marriage counseling, but honestly, if you, I have a feeling, and Pastor Aaron, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't do marriage counseling in my practice, but I have a feeling that most of the time, by the time you are at the marriage counseling phase, you're past the parts where it's it would have been best to fix the problems, and now you're in a real bad spot.
Yeah. And that's where I find value in premarital counseling and a pastor giving a couple the tools to resolve the conflict and fix the issues before they even begin the marriage. Because it's like you say, by the time a couple comes to me, things are way out of whack.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of work to do.
And then you got to really just tear everything apart and put all the pieces back together in the right way to fix that agreement. So, all right. So if your marriage is in trouble, first off, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're having a hard time. I genuinely have compassion for any of you out there who are struggling. And I have a lot of respect for anyone out there who is going to recognize that they're struggling and commit to rebuilding it and repairing the damage that's been done to that relationship. It's a valuable thing. It's worth doing. If you're married, it's worth dropping literally everything else to make it work.
Yes.
Let go of anything that's in the way. If you got to quit your job, if you got to move, if you got to do anything to make it work, because it's better to fix your marriage than it is to have any other thing. And if you're putting any other thing except for, I guess, like God and following God and God's way in front of your marriage, then it is a stumbling block to you. And so be ready, but recognize I have so much care and compassion for you, and I wish you the best as you fight through this. How are you going to fight through this? How are we going to get through this? So first things first. You have to check yourself, all right? Pastor Aaron, what's that verse about the wood and like 2x4s in people's eyes? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, the Bible is Jesus is talking about removing the little speck out of your neighbor's eye when there's a a log or a beam in your eye, you can't see clearly. I don't know off the top of my head the reference.
Well, we'll throw it up on the screen. Yeah, we'll throw it up on the screen. But the first step you're going to need to look at is, are you living right before God?
Yeah.
All right. If you and your spouse are going to run into some problems, or are having some problems, you got to look. Are you living right before God?
I would say too, as I've talked with people, it's important to understand that what you're saying is, if I'm having problems in my marriage, the tendency of us is to say, well, the problems are because she doesn't do that, and she doesn't do this, and she does that. No, that's not going to fix your marriage. What's going to fix your marriage is if you start looking at saying, so what am I doing? What should I be doing? And focus on you doing what needs to be done.
Absolutely. You're right 100%. We don't like to accept blame. We have pride. Pride is poison, okay? If you've got pride in your marriage, it's poison. So the first step, recognize, okay, am I living right before God? Because you're not going to get anywhere with any of the rest of this stuff, and you're not going to be able to achieve or come close to achieving these ideals that we've laid out in this video series.
So, I have a thing
first. Go ahead, Pastor.
If I could add to the living right before God, so an illustration that I use, and every time I bring it out, my wife rolls her eyes because she hears it so much. But if you think of the godly biblical marriage as a triangle or a pyramid, and you have God at the top of the triangle, top of the pyramid, and the husband and wife at the bottom. And a godly marriage relationship must be involving God, and God must be first in each person's life. And our thinking is, if I put God first, then my wife isn't, I'm not going to be moving closer to my wife. But if you think of it as a triangle or a pyramid with God at the top, as husband and wife draw closer to God, they draw closer to each other.
Absolutely.
And in that sense, then, if one is drawing closer to God and the other is not, they draw further from each other. So it's vitally important that they both are drawing to God and choosing God and God's way and drawing closer to Him in obedience, and then they will be drawing closer to each other.
Absolutely. So some practical steps in this area. Husbands, if you're not making sure your whole family is in church on Sunday morning for Sunday school, Sunday service, Sunday night service, and Wednesday night service, fix it. Make it happen. Make it happen for every time. You can't be living right and doing God and God's way the way you need to if you're not there in the church service. All right.
Yep.
You can't. And you might say, "Oh, well, I can watch it online." Can't. No, it's not the same. Nope. The Bible says, "Forsake not the assembling." You're not assembling when you're doing it online. Okay. And I understand we had COVID and we had all these things, and things came up so that some non-traditional options were looked at in the last couple years. But realistically, you and your family have to be in church, all right? Even if you sit there in the pew and you study the passage that the pastor preaches just that morning before you left home and everything you've heard and it seems really boring, it doesn't matter. That first step is a step of obedience, and it's going to get you in the right place to be open to that leadership to live right before God. So step 1, make sure you're in your church. Step number 2, and I'm just going to go through the pastor's soapbox here. Make sure you're reading your Bible. You can't live God's way if you don't know what it is. And maybe you have heard the words before, but the thing that keeps us able to continue following God's word and God's way is to refresh our minds with the content of God's word and God's way. So if you're not reading your Bible, you can't be living right before God, and so then that's going to interfere with your marriage. All right, so make sure you're attending church. Make sure you're reading your Bible every day. Now, the third one is maybe a little more controversial, and if Pastor Aaron wants to clip it out of the video, that's fine. But the third one I'm going to say is you need to be tithing or giving to the church. Yep. I assume, Pastor Aaron, your church has a position on storehouse tithing, so you would say that your giving should be to the church. That's one that we don't see a lot of debates about so much these days. It was a hot button issue in the 60s. But the idea is that if you're not giving of your income to the church, to God, for his use and his purposes, you're not funding the church, you're not funding missions, then you're being selfish. You're prioritizing yourself and the use you have and the wants you have for that money over God. And so you're not following his will and way for what you should do with your finances. If you can't give up the money that you have for God, then you're prioritizing yourself and you're not able to live right before God. Yep. So that's 3 areas. They're ones that, you probably hear preached. The finances one, people usually do that maybe once or twice a year. But realistically, you have to be in church. You have to be reading God's word. You've got to be giving, even if your church has the money. I don't want to oversell this dead horse, but no. you have to be willing to sacrifice yourself. If you're not sacrificing yourself, then you can't do it. And the way we do that in our modern time is doing your tithe to the church. I'm sure your church has an arrangement for you to be able to make payments towards it.
I would add one more thing.
Go ahead. I'd probably add 4 or 5 more. But
there's a whole bunch.
These are 3 big ones that are easy for everyone to do. Because you can set up the app on your phone to get the Bible verses every day. You can easily schedule it on your calendar to be at the church service every week for all the services. And you can easily budget your expenses to pay for your tithes. Yep. Those are easy things everyone can do. It's not hard.
Yep. And I said I have one more, and I already thought of another. So I have 2 more
things. Go ahead.
So one would be, along with what you're saying, and we already talked about this a little, but get your family involved in some sort of ministry, especially in an evangelistic capacity. But I think even with kids, you say, get our kids involved. Yeah, get your kids involved, because teach them at a young age to be involved in ministry, even if it's something as simple as take your family to the church and clean the church.
Sure. Yeah.
But have something, because I think that being active in service, having a goal, a purpose that you're working towards is important for us as individuals, and it's also important for a family. And the other thing that I would add to that I think is vitally important is leading your family, having your family involved together in prayer and Bible study.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good to do this at night right before you would go to bed.
Yes.
Have your family come together. It doesn't take a long time. Have your kids get their pajamas on, brush their teeth, whatever. And then sit down for like 5 minutes. Read like 1 Bible verse. Sing a song. Go to bed. Yep. Or send the kids to bed. I mean, I basically never get to go to bed, but we send the kids to bed after that.
Hey,
and it's a wonderful thing.
Even if you don't have
kids, pray together.
You could still read a verse and sing a song and then go to bed.
Yeah, that's true.
Why not?
I'm just saying that because that's what we do with our kids. But,
yeah.
So that's your step 1. Are you living right before God? Because you're not going to get the other stuff in the right place if you don't have yourself oriented towards God in the first place. All right? There's some easy steps right there. What was that, like 5 easy steps? So make sure you're attending all the church services. Stop the video right now, or I guess if it's live you can't stop, but you can still keep doing it. Put it in your calendar. My phone goes off all day with my alerts for work on the calendar. Put it in your calendar for when you're going to get ready, so your phone wakes you up and you get ready to go into the church service. Secondly, download a Bible app on your phone if you don't have one already, and then make sure that the notifications are turned on and that it's set up to notify you a Bible verse every day. This is so easy. It's easier than it's ever been. You can very easily set it up so your phone brings up a Bible verse for you, and you could pull it up, click the notification, read that verse, read the whole passage if you want. There's no excuse not to do it. You set it up right now. Pastor Aaron, the one I have on my phone that I've tried a couple of them, Tecarta, Tecarta, and maybe we can throw something up.
Yep.
It sends a little notification on my phone every day with a Bible verse, and that's a great way to make sure that you're in the Word every single day. Number 3, tithe. If you don't have a budget, you should have one anyways, because we're wise stewards, so go set that up. That you probably can't do in the middle of the video. But if you have, figure out what 10% of your income is. It's pretty easy. Add a little bit extra to that so you have an offering with it. Add some more for missions. I'd say every family can do at least $5 for missions every week, I'd imagine, for most families. So put that together, put that as an item in your budget, and make sure that you're taking care of that. Now, in the middle of the video, I don't have an easy way to set up your family devotions and, that stuff from Pastor Aaron, but I bet he does. So check with him later if you have any questions on that. So, are you living right before God? That's the step one. Step two, showing love. Are you showing love? Are you placing the other person first? You might be upset with something that's going on in your marriage right now, but the question is not to figure out what's wrong with them. It's to figure out, how am I showing love in this relationship? Am I placing the other person first? Pastor Aaron, full honesty mode right now.
Okay.
My wife's mad at me right now. Okay.
Oh.
She's mad at me because she's mad at me about garbage. I guess I've been sick. You got sick and had COVID for our last episode. Well, I got some nasty stomach bug. I've been basically in bed for like almost all of last week. It was really bad, and I kind of left some garbage all over the house and a lot of garbage in different places. And my wife let me know that she was not happy about it. She's really mad, and she's been very sweet. She's tried not to she knew I was sick, and she's been very caring and compassionate about it. But when she told me about that she was upset with me for not taking care of garbage and basically leaving garbage all over the house. To be honest, Aaron, it's a problem and it's my fault. Just to be fair.
Yeah, well.
But my reaction to it was like, are you kidding me? Like, that's all. Don't you know all the stuff I do for us and our family and how hard I've been working and all? It's like, come, and that's that fleshly reaction. Like, how dare you? How dare you try and call me out? It's not a big deal for you to throw the stuff away. Like, come on. And that's my flesh reacting. And the correct response is, hey, am I showing love? Am I putting her needs first? And the real answer, when I stopped afterwards to consider it, was like, you know what? She's right. I haven't been. It puts a lot of extra work and stress on her for me to not take care of this stuff and to leave garbage. And it's like envelopes from the mail I'd go through, and then there's like a pile of trash. I'm not putting her needs first. I'm putting my own needs, because it's easier for me to just leave the stuff all over and she'll take care of it.
Right.
But love says instead, even though I would rather not, it's better for me to put her first and take care of that trash and be diligent about taking care of that so that she's benefited from that. And as I take steps to do that and show love, that's going to repair this minor rift that we have this morning because she was upset about the trash. So that's the small picture, because my wife and I have a pretty good relationship. But if you're having bigger problems than just her being mad at you about the trash,
but those are the things that in a marriage they build. And those are the things that if you don't take care of them as they come up, they become a bigger issue that spawn bigger problems.
The Bible uses the phrase, the little foxes that spoileth the vine.
Yes.
Yeah. Things like that are the little foxes. So if I stick with my pride and my selfishness and I say, Amanda, this is ridiculous. Come on. Like I'm working like 80 hours a week and then doing school on top of that, and you're not doing anything like that. Well, it's not a big deal. You should be able to take care of the garbage and clean the house and I can go off like that and be just a scummy, terrible person, and stick with that attitude, and that's my response. And then my wife, being the sweet lady that she is, would probably just kind of be mad about that and just take care of the trash. And just continue to harbor that anger. And then the next thing would pile up, and the next thing would pile up until the little foxes have been tied together and burned everything down. See Samson in the verses in Judges on that. So the right answer is to let go of myself and instead show love by placing her first. And if you've let this stuff go on for a while, there might be a lot of things in your life. If you're having big marriage problems, there's probably a lot of things that both of you have chosen selfishness instead of love and have chosen to place yourself first. And solving that is going to require you to find the way to show love and sacrifice yourself. So that's the second thing. So first, are you living right before God? Secondly, are you showing love by placing the other person first and sacrificing yourself? Number 3, check this one as well. Are you exemplifying your virtues in your proper marital role? All right. Ladies, are you trying to take that role of leadership from your husband? And now you might say, well, he won't take it himself. Okay, then the solution isn't for you to take it up, but to encourage and edify him so that he is confident in your ability to follow him and confident that he can lead.
Which goes back to that, the wife ducking so so God can hit the husband.
Sure, and maybe the submission is a part of it, and maybe also too, maybe your husband just isn't very confident. And the women are especially well suited to bolster the confidence of their husbands, more than anything else. So this is more complicated, Aaron, because the ideas of the masculine and feminine virtues aren't something that's really clear and crystal design. It's more abstract concept. So I don't have like a list of do these things easily to orient yourself rightly, but consider yourself and consider your husband and or consider your wife, depending on which role you have, and don't focus so much on whether or not they're fulfilling their role. Consider yourself.
Yeah.
Consider what parts am I doing? So if, for example, my wife, who's basically perfect, Aaron, let's be honest. Let's say she does have some area where she's not really tending to the fire the way that I would really want. It's like the fire's getting a little cold on this side, let's say. The question shouldn't be, how do I fix my wife? How do I get after her to get that fire stoked up so that it's warm the way I want it? That's a bad way to think. That's not going to benefit you. That's not going to benefit her. It's just going to lead to hurt feelings. The question is, how can where am I not fulfilling my role that's leading her to act in this way? Because to go back to the fire example, maybe that side of the fire is a little cold because there's not enough firewood coming in.
Yep.
All right. And I don't know metaphorically in your marriage what that firewood would be, because it's just a metaphor. But maybe there's not enough firewood, and you need to go figure out how to get some more. And fulfill your role in providing so that she has what she needs. All right. If you're upset at why are all these mirrors and windows in our house dirty all the time? Our house should be clean. Well, does your wife have her needs met? So is she scrimping on cleaning supplies because you're not bringing enough money, or you're taking the money and spending it on Nintendo games or something? Like, consider what you're doing, because with the synergy of marriage, if there's some weakness, it's possible. Now, it's possible that the other person has just completely rejected the covenant and just destroyed everything. But in a typical marriage where you guys are both still on board and wanting to make it work, if there's some error, it's likely due to both parties. Both parties are involved in the error. And the solution isn't trying to fix the other person. The other person's reacting to the scenario that you set up. So if you're able to correct your own error, find a way to improve the virtues that you're lacking in, that opens the door, that fills the gap, that brings the firewood in so that she can heat the fire. Okay?
Yep.
So it's the blessing of marital synergy that if your wife has a problem, you can fix her problem by being a better man and exemplifying your virtues to a better degree. Now, it's not 100%. If you've got like Haggai's wife, I think that's the right one.
Yep.
All right, then you're in trouble. That's a different problem. But assuming,
but even in that, he focused on his role in that and stuck by her even though she wasn't doing what she should.
And that is the way to find the solution. Because let's say you're going back to the fire example, part of that fire is cold now, right? You want a big roaring fire, but part of it's cold. It doesn't help anything to yell at your wife and say, this fire's too cold. I need a warm fire when I come back. Why is this fire so cold? You're being a bad wife. You need to be a better wife, and the fire needs to be. Well, you can yell at her about that, but all that does is make her feel bad about the fire. She can't fix the fire because she doesn't have the firewood, and it's your job to get the firewood. Do you want her to go get the firewood? And maybe she will, because that's the solution a lot of women would have in that scenario. So they're like, okay, well, I'm going to go get the firewood. But when she goes to get that firewood, she's no longer able to fulfill the roles that she's best suited to. She's no longer able to do the things that she would want to be doing there in the camp because she's had to leave the camp. Because your job was to leave the camp and go get the firewood and fight the monsters and find the food and protect the family and lead the way. And you've neglected that. So the problem, is it a problem that she's not keeping the fire the way she's supposed to? Yes. But the solution is for you to be better at being the man you need to be. And that helps her. So
well said.
So that's number 3. Now we have one more here, and this one's going to be real quick, Pastor Aaron, because this is a family show. But the last one I have here is: are you and your spouse meeting your intimacy obligations?
Yep.
Okay. Now I'm sure we can put the verse on the screen because I can't remember the reference.
Yeah, here. It's 1 Corinthians 7, 3-5.
Okay, so the idea here is that as people who are married, we are part of the role of marriage, as we've mentioned in the last episode, was to meet intimacy needs. And that it's a good thing and it's a right thing and it should be exclusive and it should be excessive and it should be a great source of joy. If you don't believe me, read all of Song of Solomon. He basically won't shut up about it. We better throw the sarcasm banner up there, Aaron, or I'm going to get in trouble. Are you meeting your intimacy obligations? Okay, I don't want to go into too much detail about that, but
I think if you check out 1 Corinthians 7, it makes it pretty clear.
Yeah, so go ahead and read that. But if there's something interfering with the intimacy, and we're talking physical intimacy, that is something that's supposed to happen in a marriage. If you've got a lot of tension and upset feelings going on, it could be in part due to that need not being met. Okay? So, Pastor Aaron, due to the sake of time, I think we're going to have to wrap up here. But we do have a little bit of a, we've been talking to the married folks a lot, but for those of you out there who are pre-married or would like to be married and maybe things aren't going so well, we've got some thoughts on that. So maybe next episode, Pastor Aaron?
Yeah, I think we'll have to extend it.
All right, so we'll see you guys back for one more on the marriage and relationships series. Before we go and wrap up this episode, Pastor Aaron, we're looking for Pastor Aaron's final challenge today. What do you have for us?
Well, I have to admit, we've kind of been really covering that here. So let's get back to if your marriage is in a rough spot, are you doing these things? Go through the checklist. Are you making sure that you and your family are choosing God and God's way, and that you're living right before God? Are you, and again, as we've already said, focus on yourself, not on your spouse. Am I showing love and placing the other person first? And am I exemplifying my virtues that are proper in my role, and am I meeting the intimacy obligations of marriage? So really it's an inward focus of an examination. Am I doing what I should be, and am I being selfless, or am I being selfish in my marriage?
That's fantastic. So do that checklist this week, folks. Thank you for joining us on Finding the Point. It's great that all of you were able to get through. Go ahead and leave us a comment. We've been doing this long-form version for the last few episodes here, and I'd just love to hear any feedback that our viewers have about it. So leave us a comment on this video or send us a message over on our Facebook page. Thank you once again as well to Calvary Baptist Church in here in South Dakota for sponsoring this show. Everyone out there, take some time, work on your marriage, or plan to work on that marriage when you get it. We'll see that in the next episode. But get out there, choose God and God's way.